Hello, everyone. My name is Dara Khera. I've been in the industry for about 30 years. Second generation, so my family were engineers and constructors, and the generation before me. So that's how I came into it. I came to BIM in the early 2000s, so I've been doing it for more than 20 years. And I was a guy who believed, excuse me, let me get this into the right order. Who believed the marketing, that BIM would change everything. It would get you all the information in one place. It would coordinate all the problems that we were seeing. And so for the first 5 years that I tried that, I just thought I was doing it badly. I thought, my mum had told me I was a smart kid, and I thought she lied to me. All these years she lied to me because I cannot get this to work. But we carried on. So today I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about my experience and tell you that the truth about BIM and the difficulty of telling people what it is and how you get the results of it are very difficult. And I hope that if I make you a little bit aware about it, you won't run away and hide. So here goes. Who are we? We're a construction company that's been around for about 25 years, also an architectural company, and technology. So the technology that we were getting out of the box to help us just build the buildings, get the information for normal buildings, the things that are happening in towns and cities throughout, a hospital, a school, a residential block of flats. How do we get this promise of BIM? And that was really something that I grew up in. I went to school in Silicon Valley when I was 16. And when I came back to the UK, I'd seen all this promise of tech again, and I just never saw it delivered. We could make some models, but at the end of the day, we were still coming back and delivering information in 2D. So I'll tell you a little bit about the type of projects we've been doing over the last 20 years. There's quite a variety of them, and they all have their challenges. So what you see here is an art gallery in Mayfair. We do quite a lot of art galleries. And this one opened with Jeff Koons, and the gallery was from a converted office building. It had to be ready in 8 weeks, and the air had to be tested, so no dust particles in the air. So there's 80 million pounds worth of sculptures there, and a 50 million pound Picasso in the private viewing room. Another gallery literally across the street, again in Mayfair, for Sadie Coles, who's a preeminent art dealer in London. And then we'd do things like historic buildings too. So this was Houghton Hall, and it was the largest Palladian palace in the UK. In fact, Sandringham was made out of Houghton land. So, we've done old buildings, and the reasons that we used technology here was the North Wing had a fire, and we were able to digitally scan everything, put it back into the model, and then put the building exactly back as it should be. And then back into buildings that are more common, that are going up every week. This is a CLT, residential care home, and we didn't like the original design. We didn't like what was happening on it, and we went back through planning and still put the building up within 13 months. So that's planning, going back through planning and drawing the building, arranging the building, and getting it built all within 13 months. And again, just to sort of stretch this idea that BIM can deliver, this was a community center, publicly funded, so the tender had to be won. And the building was originally designed to have chipboard floors, chipboard walls, because they just didn't have they thought they didn't have the budget. So within the same budget, we gave them what we hope is a almost museum quality building made out of CLT, highly, highly sustainable, and it will run from a whisper of energy. But, the thing is, we're also familiar with traditional working practices because that's where we came from and that's where all the holes were. So being pioneers in the new stuff, really, really getting dirty and really making every mistake you could make, we ended up understanding for us how it would work for us, very much for us. Maybe not for everybody, but for us. And there were some real key lessons to learn here. And I'll try and go through some of those for you. So, yes, we build very accurate BIM models. yes, we build files that are good for design for manufacture, off-site manufacture. We're really big into virtual design for construction because BIM can mean many, many things. But in the way that we use it, in every way, not in a over the hills and far away, and this, you might get this in 3 or 4 years' time. This is what you can have today, and what works today, what we've proven over time works for us. And we're compliant, so we're not coming off the standard. So we are using ISO 19650. Almost everybody says they're compliant, and in my experience, almost nobody is. We've also been paperless to site for 5 years. So what was the promise of BIM? Coordinated, accurate, reduced risk, lower cost. We have all of these. In short, really, reducing your risk, reducing your time, increasing your reward. But has this really happened, you know? So the secret number one is everyone's using BIM now. You know, when I first started using it, people thought I was silly, but now everybody is saying they're using BIM in one form or another. But in that same period, we're not seeing the productivity. We're not seeing it applied. It's not that we're not having it applied, we're not seeing the outcomes for everyone. And so those are some of the things I really want to delve into a little bit. So secret number 2 is really about the employers, the clients. You know, what's your responsibility in this? And you are, you should know that you're the most important part, but even if you don't, you really need to examine this. You're asking for that building to be built, and you have information requirements that you might not be aware that you need, and if you do not ask for them, the default position is to give you as little information as possible. And that's because if somebody gave you information that you didn't ask for, they'll say, well, you might say, I want some money back because I didn't ask you for this. So you have a problem. We have a problem there. And the biggest problem is you don't know how to, most people, so apologies for anybody who does know how to specify their information requirements, but in my experience, most people don't. And if you can't tell somebody what you want, then you're going to get what you're given. Secret number 3. BIM is not reliably open or interoperable. So quite often you come to a conference like this and people will tell you, well, you know, we'll get this software to speak together. And there's a lot of software out there. But you'll find that if you buy it, it will not speak to one another, and then you've given yourself a bigger headache. And you go, well, I've got a disparate piece of information here, and another piece of information here, and I've got to give it all to the guy, you know, who's at the end of the spade. And how's he going to deal with it? Because he's the guy normally who's telling you got a problem, right? Whether that's in 2D or 3D, it's the guy at the end of the space because actually it doesn't work. So why are we making specifications and drawings from engineers, architects, models, and then waiting for the contractor to tell us it doesn't work? I mean, there seems to be something disturbingly wrong about that scenario. And BIM is misunderstood. It's not CAD. It's not supposed to be CAD. The clue is in the eye. It's information. And modeling doesn't necessarily mean graphic. It doesn't mean you actually get a model. Information can be modeled non-graphically. People need to understand that modeling isn't necessarily a model. And Revit certainly isn't BIM. I mean, Revit's been great software, but it's 30 years old. You know, it runs off a single processor. It really is not fit for purpose, but it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's really like, you know, it's frustrating for people who use it and frustrating for clients. It's like driving a car with one wheel, you know, so you can go slowly around in circle, but that's about the extent of your journey. From a client's point of view, because I don't think clients really go, here's a great model, you can manage your building with this, use it, have fun, great, we've done our job. So Revit is not BIM, BIM is not CAD. Get a grip on that, because if you can ask for what you want, a model that represents your building, which gets rid of O&Ms, paper O&Ms, you need to ask for it. You need to ask for digital. If you ask really well what you want, people will quickly tell you that they start to wriggle because it's difficult to deliver those things. There's a real deliverables. Secret number 4. I think I've covered it a little bit. Building information modeling is a nebulous term. What does it mean? lots of things. You can have a daylight study, that's BIM. You get a graphical representation, you can see your model. Structural analysis, that can be BIM. Heat loss calculations can be BIM. But they're all separate, right? All lots of different. You'd really, I think people would like all that information in one place, coordinated, working together, speaking the same language. So it's not one thing, it's many things. Understand what it is, then you can understand what you're buying. Secret number 5. For me, this is the most important one, right? And for me, it should be the most basic one. It doesn't matter if you're doing it in 2D. It doesn't matter if you're doing it in BIM. If you're trying to build your model or do your drawings as you're building your building, it's not really going to be efficient. You know, you're going to be chasing your tail, and you're going to be trying to find out whose fault was it. Was it the MEP guy? Was it the engineer? Who got it wrong? And you'll never be able to find. It's like chasing a white rabbit. You're never going to figure out who did it. Yeah, it's a tough one. So, lo-fi BIM. This is what I think most people get. They may think it's hi-fi BIM, but it's lo-fi BIM, and they get a model if they're lucky. Here's a model of your building, sir. This is what it looks like. But when you do that, great, you've got a model that looks like your building, but then if you're trying to explain that building from 3D back into 2D, that means a lot of 2D drawings, plans, sections, elevations, and so on. Well, you're gonna lose a lot of that information in translation. You know, you've got to, don't forget, all that information's got to go to the guys who are building it, right? And it's all in different places, and that's when you've got to find the mistakes, and that's where all that heartache's going to begin for you. So what's happening today? Today we are working 3D, and we make those models to make PDFs of 2D drawings, and then we try and build a 3D building. 2D drawings, really, you need to be well trained to understand that abstraction and to fill in the gaps and make sure it's there. We're losing those talents. In the construction industry, your average age of your work is 49. 3% of the people in construction, people under 21 only make up 3% of the construction industry. So we don't have the skills that we used to have. We don't have the person who will sit down and understand where the gaps are. We're losing those people. So we try and eliminate that noise by saying, let's go 3D to 3D. Let's be very accurate about it. Let's tell them where every bolt, where every piece of glue, what every tile goes, and how it gets there. Single source of truth. The graphical and non-graphical, they should all be saying the same. You shouldn't have to be trying to decipher that information. It should be the same, it should be coordinated, it should work. So I'm going to go a little bit into the benefits of how our journey has been, how we've experienced it, and how we use it. And I have to admit, first of all, we do work in a bubble. You know, we control the design, we control the construction process. And that's how we get our results. So it makes a lot of sense for us. So what I'm showing you here is a model on the right. That model has got details of everything in it, down to the screws. Every screw is individually programmed, every socket is known. That's the result that you get from the building afterwards. Now that building above ground was built in 3 months. Completely on budget, completely on time. Digital O&Ms, all information in one place. And here you have, I worked with a fancy architect, and he gave me a very good CGI of what he wanted. And so one of those is a CGI, and one of those is the building we delivered. So, you know, I'll leave it to you to figure out which was which. Okay, so to end off with, if you like, I'm happy to give you a fly-through of maybe what our vision of BIM looks like, what hyper-granular looks like. But before I do that, I want to be very careful at saying, you know, we go to a lot of detail to do things, but everything that we model is purposeful. So we're not going to model a nail for the sake of modeling a nail. If we build a CLT structure, the screws that hold that structure together are very important. So it's very important that there's reliability and somebody put those screws in and they're going in the right place. So I will try and switch over now from the presentation and go into where we are. Okay. I'm going to just swap this model out for a moment. I'll come back to this one. So you can see I have a lot of models on my machine, and we produce, in the design process, we produce a model a week, and there's a reason for doing that. We check everything in the virtual as if it were the real, until the model has been checked and checked and checked, and it's reliable, we don't go to site. Or that's the way that we like to do it most often. Occasionally it happens the other way, but I don't recommend it. So I'm going to start off by showing you small building. It's actually the building that you saw earlier, but I'm just going to show you the level of detail here. So when we say we model, down to every screw so people know where they are, it genuinely is there. So I'll try and get right into the detail of it here. So if I pick up a screw, there we go. It'll tell me what the screw is, who made it, and the product code on it. It'll also tell me what the information on the plate is behind it. And and that's what the guys on site use. It's not kept amongst the consultants, it's what everybody has. But within the same model, they've got an MEP view as well. And oops, that's opening here. And within that MEP view, everything's, all the colors also to international standards. We can pick on a part here within that, and it should tell us what that part is also. Manufacturer, who made it, and so on. But you can get, in a way, you can get a lot more out of these models, and I'm going to swap another model now. So I'm going to, people sometimes ask, what about an old building? So I'm going to show an old building being renovated and how that works. So, and I don't have a huge team of people doing this. I have 1 or 2 people on a model maximum. Okay, I'm going to, let's start. I'll start from the beginning. So here we go. So when we strip out the building, this was an old derelict church with an old derelict industrial unit at the back of it, and it was being turned into a cultural center for artists. And you can start with saying, you can put your daylight study in here, and you can check even that within. You don't have to go to another consultant. You can do it all in the one place. In fact, you can put in the day and time and check exactly where the light's going to be, and it really should be that easy. Let's go back here for a minute. Let's just close that off here. And as we go into this load-bearing model, you can see that the rebar is there for something that's going to be a fountain in the future. There's a lot of ambient information, so the red part of the building is what's existing, and the blue is what we're going to add. And each one of the elements here has all the data you need, and whether that's a posi joist or a single piece of wood, you know what the location that wood's going to, what its strength class is. I could bore you with this for a long time, the length, the weight, whether it's installed, what was the lead time. You can fill all this stuff in the same place, and you should be able to do it as easily as that. Then we're going to go for the same building that you've seen with its MEP view. And I'm just going to take you back outside so you can see what happened on the outside. So now the concrete's been poured over that rebar we saw on that fountain in the beginning. A few pipes have gone in. These are all your underfloor heating circuits, and they're complete with even the clips that hold them down. But as you go through the building, you can ask for a piece of MF, and it will again tell you what the MF is. So you can quantify it, absolutely. So we have no waste. So the big thing is, right, how much are you throwing away all the time? We know exactly how many pieces are in our building. We don't throw anything away. They call our building sites the Swiss building sites because nothing turns up that isn't used. We've reduced our skips to having where it was normal to have a skip on site every single day, but anyone in the industry knows how expensive those are now, right? So our skips have gone down by a factor. We have only the wrappings go in the skip. We have very little building waste. So if we go into a tab here, for example, as a digital O&M, if you are using this as a digital O&M, you can just go and ask, well, what's that tab? And you're going to get that information there. So that's for the client. That's your model for the client trying to fix their building, know what the light bulb is, what the color was, where did the tap come from. All of that should be in one place, available to you. Let's deselect that. Right. So I'm going to go into showing you what else happens. So people like 2D. They do like 2D, and if I'm trying to persuade everyone just go 3D to 3D, I'm going to have a problem. Or I may have a problem. But what you're seeing here now are all the drawings that are automated off the system. So if anybody wants, and it's going to take me a moment or two to do, but if I pick a drawing here, for example, when you throw a bit of automation in, you can simply just look at the detail in the drawings. That's automated off the model. All the markers, all the measurements, everything's automated off. And we can, sorry. I've done the classic, I've crashed it. They're normally reliable. So I'll give that a moment to load. But essentially, okay, let's go again. So when you have a 2D drawing, that should also relate back to the model itself. And so if all we have to do is highlight a wall that we want to look at, we should be able to find that wall in the model and so anyone building it can see where it goes in the model and how it works. I'm just going to rotate that a little bit around so you can see it. So it makes the life of the guy fitting it simple, easy, clear. And then you can, of course, if you want to, you can just build it, bring out your building to wherever you want to see it. It's the same information, all collated, coordinated in one place. There's one last thing I'll show you. If you want to know where your money is going, where your spend is, well, we have every single part in the building. We can locate the parts and we can tell you where they are and we can quantify them for you. So if let's have a look here, make sure my zones are on. Okay. Anyway, this is a list of all the parts in the building. I was going to try and show you one other element in it. But essentially, we have a quantity for everything that you want at the building, whether it's your lights, whether it's your fittings, you know where they are, and you can locate them all from here. And so all of this information is less than a gig, and it can live on your phone, and it can live in your office, and you can refer to it any time you want. And that's a model for the client that stays with the client, not a model for the architect,